What is the perfect 350Z? What modifications does it have done to it? Is it rocking stock wheels or aftermarket Avid 1 AV06s? Is the motor turbocharged or naturally aspirated? Is it a certain trim level that Nissan offered from the factory? Do you want to know what I think the perfect 350Z is?
Well, you're listening to my show, so I will assume you do.
Welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome back to Phoenix, Arizona, and welcome to another video. I kneel humbly before you all right now to try to present the perfect 350Z. Is that the perfect 350Z back there? Absolutely not. What the purpose of today's video is to try to unpack what the perfect 350Z would be. And granted, this is opinion. This would be probably my perfect 350Z. It doesn't have to be your perfect 350Z, but it should give you a general idea if you just picked one up, or if you're looking into buying one, or if you've completely written them off and thought they were stupid but somehow clicked on this video. It will give you an opinion of somebody who's owned one for almost 2 years at 11,000 miles, the things that they would look for in a 350Z if they were buying one today, or the things that they would put on their 350Z if they already had them. Now, mind you, we're chasing perfection in this video, so budget has to go out the window. I'm a budget-minded guy. That is why this isn't the perfect 350Z. Now, in order to define the perfect 350Z, we have to first figure out its philosophy of use. What are we going to use it for? Now, to me, the perfect 350Z can do pretty much anything. It can go on a road trip across country. You can take it to the track and have a blast. If you want to drift it, you can drift it. Or if you just want to bomb around town with your friends and have it sound and look really cool. To me, this is it. Where do we start, front or back? I say we start in the front, and there's one reason why. The 350Z has all kinds of submodels, and depending on the year, they vary. There's the base, there's the track, there's the enthusiast, there's the touring, the grand touring, and the Nismo. And depending on the year, you may or may not be able to get one of these. So, to me, the perfect 350Z, sorry guys, I have a DE, it's gonna be an HR. So it has to be a 2007 to 2008, and I think the trim level to have is gonna be the grand touring. Some of you might argue with me and say it's the Nismo. Personally, I don't think the 350Z Nismo has aged that well. I think the more basic models like the Touring and Grand Touring have aged very well, and the Grand Touring is the one I would go for. You get HR motor, Brembo brakes. I think the Grand Touring maybe comes with like the navigation in it. I'm not 100% sure. Not that you need that, but remember, this is the perfect 350Z. So to me, a 2007 or 2008 HR Grand Touring would be the perfect trim level. Now, if you ask me, color is not that important. The 350Z comes in lots of cool colors, but the perfect 350Z, I think, would be in that solar orange. Hallelujah. I believe it was only offered in 07 and 08, and there's very limited numbers of it. I'll put it up somewhere if I can find it, but it's a pretty hard color to come by. And with that HR hood, that's another reason I would go HR on my 350Z. I love the HR hood. The DE is sick, the engine's fine. Depending on who you talk to, where the torque is made and stuff, it might even be a better option than the HR, especially in the drift world. We won't get into that in this video. But in the perfect 350Z, that HR hood with the HR engine and solar orange, to me, is the perfect color motor combo.
The next day.
Alright, now continuing on with the front of the car, let's talk about the engine. Imagine with me for a second that this is an HR, so you got the other intake coming off here. What modifications would I make to the engine? Now, if you're a longtime subscriber to the channel, you probably know what I'm gonna say. Honestly, I'm leaving the engine alone. I'm keeping it bone stock. If I have a DE, I am gonna put a catch can in there, link in the description, as they do consume a little bit more oil, and I do feel that that does help. But with the HRs, it's not that much of a problem. So I'm leaving everything bone stock on my perfect 350Z because Nissan kind of tuned these things up from the factory. They make good power. I'm at the stage in my life where I like reliability. And going back to the philosophy of use, if we're going to track this thing, take it across country, or go cruising with the buddies, or drift it, we need ultimate reliability. But Jesse, I have to have so-and-so's intake. It does so much better than the stock intake, blah, blah, blah. that's fine, more power to you. Just know I've put cold air intakes on other cars, not this one. It has messed with idle. I have gotten check engine lights. So, you know, do what you got to do. I'm just saying for the perfect 350Z, I don't want any of that. Keep in mind that I've gone through my 20s, you know, I've done the intakes and the cams and all that good stuff that kind of messes with reliability. I'm not trying to hate on them or anything, but at the end of the day, what you're saying is that your car's not good enough. And so you have to go spend all this money on making it better. And take it from somebody who went that route, messed up a perfectly good Trans Am, had to rebuild it a couple times, finally got it running again, and then inevitably sold it at a loss. Don't do what I did. Of course, I've seen my analytics. I know how old a lot of you are. You're gonna have to learn your own lessons. You don't have to listen to me, but I'm just saying, you know, take it from somebody who's been there, done that. Keep your cars as stock as possible. They'll be super reliable that way. If it's not fast enough, go buy a faster car. Now let's talk about the front bumper. Does the perfect 350Z need a lip or an aftermarket bumper? This is an area where I'm gonna say it's totally up to you. The nice thing about the models other than the Nismo is you can kind of express yourself with the lip or the front bumper and not hurt the value of the car too much. With a Nismo, you're kind of expected to keep it a Nismo. So does the perfect 350Z have a bumper modification up front? You know, in my scenario, yeah, I'd probably put a lip or something on there, something very subtle. This one's, you know, kind of blocky and big. I had a crack on that side of the bumper when I bought this car, so that's why I put it on. But that's an area where I can flex. It's totally up to you. One last thing, well, maybe two, and then we'll wrap up the front end. I do think an oil cooler has a place on this car. On the perfect 350Z, would I have it? I probably would, just as an insurance policy. I don't care what brand it is. If you go, you know, Mishimoto or Z1 or, you know, whoever. For me, as long as it doesn't mess with reliability and it's easy enough, like I'd probably do an oil cooler that takes a quart, that adds a quart to the system. To me, that makes a lot of sense. And since the perfect 350Z will be drifting, tracking, you might need that at some point. I have noticed that this thing does cook oil and your oil pressure will go down when you're beating on it pretty good. So I do think the perfect 350Z would probably have an oil cooler, something that this car will probably get in the future. I said last thing, but this really is the last thing, the headlights. Snapshot in time, subject to change. You know, headlights are an ever-changing style, so, you know, I painted mine black. Does the perfect 350Z have painted headlights? Maybe yours does. On mine, I like the way the black looks. Honestly, if it was a really low mile, hard to find solar orange HR, I probably wouldn't mess with them. If it's a higher mileage car like mine, you know, 187,000 miles or whatever's on it, you can afford to mess with them a little bit and it's not that big a deal. Does it need it? No. Does it look cool? Yes, absolutely. If you need to paint your headlights, I do have a video out there. You can go check my channel out and find it. I think it's called Painting 350Z Headlights for Dummies. I forgot to mention it too, but there's a million aftermarket headlights as well. You wouldn't have to paint them. Totally up to you on what you want to do there.
A few minutes later.
I think it goes without saying, but obviously the perfect 350Z has a 6-speed. Comment below, what about automatics? What do you think of automatics? I'm sorry, I'm not going to respond. I'd rather own a Toyota Camry in an automatic than a 350Z in an automatic.
24 hours later.
He's probably going to tell you that you need to keep the exhaust stock now too. All right, now let's move on to the middle of the car and talk about the most important thing. Does the perfect 350Z need an aftermarket exhaust?
Give me a hell yeah!
100% beyond a shadow of a doubt, the 350Z has to have an exhaust system on it. Stock leaves a lot to be desired. And when you open this thing up, you can make it sound amazing. For the record, it was my idea to put an aftermarket exhaust on this car. Now, if you're new to the platform, here's how the 350Z exhaust works. You've got your exhaust manifolds. Those connect to your catalytic converters. They're bolt on. The catalytic converter section bolts on to a Y-pipe section, and then the Y-pipe bolts on to your normal catback section that heads out the back. This will probably be a popular subject of debate in the comments. You can go test pipes, high flow cats, or you can leave the stock cats. I think test pipes is where this car gets a bad reputation on sounding like a ridiculous trumpet, or all the rasp or whatever. I'm a huge fan of high flow cats. That's why I have it on my car. So I've got the ISR high flow cats going into the ISR Y pipe and the ISR single exit GT catback. On my perfect 350Z, I think I would do exactly the same thing. Although anything that was offered in titanium, I would get in titanium just to save weight. So I know the catback comes in titanium. I'm not sure if they do the Y pipe in titanium or not. That's what I would put on the perfect 350Z. I'm cool with flexing there. You know, if you want to do a Tomei or a Z1 or Greddy or whatever your taste is, more power to you. But on the perfect 350Z, I'm going ISR and using titanium wherever I can. Not to mention with the high flow cats, if you're in a state with emissions, you'll still be able to pass emissions and you're not dumping all that extra carbon into the air. I am a bit of a hippie or green freak, so I do like the thought of not polluting as much with my car. So that's another reason I went with the high flow cats. They will cost you a little bit of extra money though. The test pipes are definitely cheaper, but I always say you get what you pay for. And since there's no budget on the perfect 350Z, high flow cats it is. Now we are going to talk about wheels, but before we do that, I want to talk about suspension. My 350Z is running Isr Coilovers front and back. They are a value option. They are a high value option. I love these things. It completely transformed the way this car rides. The perfect 350Z is getting BC coilovers. I don't know the exact spec I would go with, but I would call them because they will help you spec out your own coilovers. I would give them the philosophy of use, and whatever they recommended, that is the coilover I would use. So there's no debate there on the perfect 350Z. For any other 350Z, you can totally flex ISR, BC, K Sport, Megan, you know, Tyne, whatever you want to do, you get, do. But when there's no budget, I'm going BC. Now, although we're talking about the perfect 350Z, if you were on a budget perfect 350Z, and who knows, maybe that's a video I should do, you can get away with the stock suspension. You put 19-inch rims and a bigger tire on a stock suspension 350Z, it actually looks really good, and you get ground clearance. Lowering a 350Z, you do have ground clearance issues. That's why this one isn't slammed, because the exhaust goes underneath the rear subframe. So a slammed one, you can't go anywhere, because if you hit a speed bump or a rock, your exhaust is getting totally screwed. So on a budget 350Z, you can get away with stock suspension. Now, before I carry on with the suspension bits, I think it's important that we just pause for a second and remember the philosophy of use on this car. This is not a full-blown drift car. This is not a full-blown track car. This is a car that you can take to the track and have fun. This is a car that you can drift and have fun. It's not a full-blown drift car. And it's a car that you can take across country. So keep that in mind when I'm going over some of the suspension bits here. For the perfect 350Z up front, we're doing camber arms for adjustability at the track and for drifting. And I would do the budget GK Tech angle kit, which I have on this car. And by the way, if you guys are watching this video and decide to buy any of this stuff, my channel does have how-to videos on installing most of the stuff that's on this car. So just FYI. I'm a uniformity snob, so I love when a car is uniform, so all GK Tech, all ISR. The problem with this car is ISR doesn't make everything for this car, and neither does GK Tech. So this thing's got a little bit of a mix between ISR and GK Tech stuff. And that is all I'm doing in the front, snapshot in time, subject to change. Give you a quick look at the ISR coilovers here in the rear. What am I doing in the rear? I'm doing the camber and toe arms for sure, for track and drifting. Am I doing a dual caliper on a perfect 350Z? No, I am not, and here's why. Most of us who own 350Zs are never gonna be professional drifters, so the stock e-brake works just fine. It's really hard on your car every time you take it out drifting. Like you're literally beating the crap out of it. So the perfect 350Z is actually kind of a nice car, so I think you're gonna have a hard time just beating the living crap on it on Friday and Saturday drift nights. So that's why I'm not putting a dual caliper or a hydro in it. I'm just using the stock e-brake. It's plenty good, it'll lock those wheels up. It's easy enough to replace if you mess it up. What's that? You drift a lot more than the average bear? Okay, your perfect 350Z then would have the GK Tech bolt-in hydro. I love it because it can come in and out without messing up the car. It's a clean setup, as you can see. It doesn't intrude on the driver. I do have to rest my knee on it a little bit on longer trips. So I mean, if you're going across country, maybe it would get annoying. I haven't gone across country with this car because it's a base model and it doesn't have cruise control. Another reason I'd get a Touring or Grand Touring. But if you're drifting your 350Z a lot, in your perfect scenario, you might want a hydro and dual caliper. Couple honorable mentions on suspension. I am doing eccentric lockout kits. I don't want to mess up my expensive alignment that I got done for the track or for drifting. And I'm also doing a diff brace on these. Pick your brands. I'm running Bell and ISR currently. The perfect 350Z, if I went ISR arms, I do the ISR lockout. If I went GK Tech, I do the GK Tech. Probably do a GK Tech brace. But one thing nice about the Bell is you can still get to the fill hole if you're gonna need to change fluids in your diff. The GK Tech blocks that. The rear diff bushing is probably one of the most overhyped piece of sales in the aftermarket that I've ever seen. Mine is completely blown, doesn't matter at all. Because of the diff brace here and that second mounting point, this is basically a solid mount now, so it's basically like having a solid bushing if you don't have a diff brace, so I don't even know why people mess with that. These are the same price as a diff bushing, and this is 100 times easier to put on. A lot of times people have to buy an extra kit just to get that out, or they end up taking the subframe mount and like lighting it on fire and just doing weird things. So diff brace all the way. One last thing, since we're under the car and back here right now, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, the Perfect 350Z does have a bumper cut, and it does have a single exit exhaust. Sorry for you guys running duals. To me, that just adds weight, and when you don't have a dual exhaust, you don't want this other hole showing, so the bumper tuck is the way to go with a single exit, in my opinion. Rounding out underneath the car, we have to talk about the rear diff. I have had every single rear diff in this car. I started with an open diff. I put a welded diff in it. I was a little about that. Then I put a VLSD in it. I actually made a video. It's one of my early ones. If you ever want to see like awkward me with really bad editing, which probably still is me, go check out What's the Diff. I swapped the welded for a VLSD in there. The VLSD is not what it's all cracked up to be, in my opinion. So what does the Perfect 350Z get? I'm putting a mechanical LSD in here. I'm gonna pony up the dollars, and that way I get drivability. The welded diff is pretty good, but in a Perfect 350Z you wouldn't want a welded diff. The VLSD and the open diff are basically crap, in my opinion, so I am going to pony up the money on the Perfect 350Z and put a mechanical LSD in it. All right, let's talk wheels. First things first, let's start with size. Now you can bolt 20-inch GTR rims on these. I've seen people do it. It looks pretty good. My problem there is tires are going to cost a lot of money, and if this thing's going to the track and getting drifted, you're probably not going to be wanting to burn through 20s, nor will you want to burn through 19s. It gets expensive. So snapshot in time, I'm going 18s. Now there's so many great wheel companies out there, a million different options. Everyone's gonna have their own flavors. Obviously I kind of dig the look of a TE37. That's why I'm running these knockoffs. These are Avid One AVO6s. So on my Perfect 350Z, I'm going with a set of Ray's TE37 SLs. I believe they're one of the lightest ones you can get currently, but I can totally flex on this. Go with whatever brand you want. We're just talking Perfect 350Z here. Now, having said all that about the wheels, I will give some input. I would do at least an 18 by 9.5. That'll give you all kinds of tire size options. Up front, I'm always going to be running a sticky tire. I like the Nitto NT05s. I'm currently running 555 G2s, I think. The NT05s out here in Arizona get ripped up. I mean, like literally 3,000-4,000 miles on the highways out here, and they are done. So I can't run them. But if I was a serious tracker, a serious drifter, I'd probably have NT05s up front. And then on the rear, pick your flavor. If you're going drifting, depending on your skill level, maybe you want something a little bit slippery, maybe you want something a little bit tacky. Obviously, if you're going to the track, maybe you're doing a drag radial, maybe you're putting an NT05 back there. I think a 275 on the back is plenty of tire for the 350Z. I'm currently running a 245 in the rear and a 235 up front. But all of that can be up for debate. At the end of the day, you have to pick what works for you. Fitment wise, this car has a good fitment. The Perfect 350Z in the rear, from what I've seen, from what I like to see the tire and the wheel pretty flush with the body. You're gonna want about a +0 offset. This is a +18. It does have the dual caliper bracket, which is 8mm, and a 10mm GK Tech spacer in there right now, so that's a +0 offset right there. As you can see, the fitment's pretty good. I don't have this thing slammed, so the fenders aren't rolled. I do not get any rubbing. Ideally, I'd like to go a little bit lower, but then my exhaust would drag on things, and it already is kind of nerve-wracking getting into car washes and going over speed bumps, so I personally don't want to go any lower. And then up front, this is the same +18. I have a 5mm spacer up here, and there's your fitment. All right, rounding out the back of the 350Z, pun totally intended there. We already talked about the bumper tuck. The Perfect 350Z is going to have a spoiler on it. Sorry for you guys who aren't rocking spoilers. In the Porsche world, there's the GT3 and the GT3 Touring. Helicopter. Squirrel. Anyways, the GT3 being the sporty version of the car, the GT3 Touring being the classy man's version of the car. Maybe your 350Z is a classy man's 350Z, that's fine. Mine is gonna be a sporty man's version. I will flex on which one. This is not the perfect spoiler. I would say maybe the Nismo spoiler or like a real man's wing. Paul Walker had a 370Z that was rocking TE37 wheels that got sold to Barrett Jackson a year or two ago. I'd probably go with a wing like that if I was tracking it some, but if I wanted to be a little bit more low profile, I'd probably do the Nismo wing. One honorable mention, if you're rocking a rear wiper, you need to delete that. Link down below for this plug, and I do have a how-to video. I'll put that in the description as well. Do you need anything else on the exterior of your 350Z? No. To me, it's perfect the way it is. Really quick, I'll touch on the interior for the Perfect 350Z. Big surprise here, guys. I would keep it bone stock. I know a lot of you have probably seen my Energy steering wheel with quick release. It's kind of cool, but you definitely don't need it. I would say it's more of a waste of money than anything. And in the Perfect 350Z, where I have no budget, I still wouldn't put it in there. Plus, we'd be in a Grand Touring model there anyway, so we'd have cruise control. There's no place to put it on a racing steering wheel. This is a base, so it didn't really matter. On top of that, with the Perfect 350Z, I would be trying to keep resale value as high as possible. If you start messing with steering wheels and gutting interior, it's not gonna be good. Which reminds me, full interior all the way. You're gonna want your air conditioning and a quiet car when you're sitting in grid or waiting to go at the track. So sorry to disappoint, but the Perfect 350Z's interior is stock. He's so stupid, it needs racing seats. No, it doesn't. The 350Z seats aren't perfect, but they do have some bolster support, little thing in the middle to keep you locked in place. I don't think it really does anything, but you could do a lot worse. And remember, the Perfect 350Z can go on a cross-country trip, so you're not gonna want to be sitting in a racing bucket that doesn't adjust that whole time. Okay, we're almost done. 2 things left. Number 1, there is a wire in the stock ECM or computer down underneath the dash here. It is pin 101. I have a video on it. I'll put it in the description. Pin 101 has to be cut on the Perfect 350Z because you can't left foot brake, aka give the car gas and brake at the same time for burnouts or while in drift with it. So that has to be cut. It does not cause a light on the dash. So even on the Perfect 350Z, it's not that big a deal, and this car should have never had that in the first place. Now, I did this on my 06 DE base. I would have to verify that on an 07 HR, which is the Perfect 350Z. I'd have to verify it's the same wire, and I would have to verify that it wouldn't mess with cruise control or anything, but to my knowledge, it doesn't. Last but not least, these cars do have ABS on them. I think ABS is kind of worthless, but if you disable it, you will get a light on the dash. So my remedy for that, this is how you get rid of ABS. It's this fuse right here. This one has to remain intact. That's for your ignition, but these two need to be clipped in order to cut ABS. So in the Perfect 350Z, like in this car, I've got one fuse that disables ABS, and I've got the stock fuse too, where everything is still intact. That way, if I want to get rid of the light in there, I just pop in the ABS fuse and we're good to go. Yes, I know I'm missing my windshield washer fluid cap. I think that will pretty much do it for today's video, guys. I've probably got a little bit long, so I won't drag out the outro. I hope you enjoyed my opinion on the Perfect 350Z. Maybe even found it useful if you're buying one, fantasizing about one, or working on one currently. Hopefully it helped you, but in any event, I appreciate you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. I'll catch you in the next one. Let's see. The Perfect 350Z might not even be out there anymore. Frickin' A. First, I landed at the 350Z. Right now, to try and present another thing I want to talk about is, as I film this, it is September 2020. An almost 2-year owner and 11,000 miles of history, blah, blah, blah. I don't think I can film this video today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the hardest video I've ever tried to shoot. I got mad a couple weeks ago and threw the air nozzle at a gas station because it wouldn't fill my flat tire. And unfortunately, it didn't hit the machine I was throwing at. It hit the back of my car and dented it. Good.